Hello, welcome everyone this afternoon. I'm going to take a few seconds here to allow the rest of attendees to log in and test their audio. Welcome everyone to the pre-proposal conference. We will get started here in just a few more seconds. All right, let's get started. Today is Tuesday, June 23rd. You are participating in the Deliverables-Based Information Technology Services, otherwise known as DBITS, Request for Offer, DIR, CPO, TMP 553 Pre-Proposal Conference. Before we get started, and I turn this over to Colleen Berkeley, I want to just make sure we have all audio. And if everyone can hear me, if they could raise their hand. Awesome, looks great, thank you. I'm also requesting that all questions, if you have any, please post them in the Q&A right here in the green box. And we will address those as they come in, or Colleen will address those later in the presentation. And finally, the chat feature has been disabled, and this is to allow that we make sure all questions are documented. And last but not least, any information will be posted in addendum, and Colleen will also cover that as well. I will turn this over to Colleen at this time.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you all for joining us today. If we were in a big auditorium, I would tell you all to look around the room just to see how much interest we have in this DBITS procurement that we are running. But do know that we are well on our way to 500 participants in this webinar. So just be aware there is a lot of competition. My name is Colleen Berkeley. I am the Director of Procurement Services here at DIR, and I am your single point of contact for DBITS. If you have any questions, it's listed in the RFO, but please direct those to me, and I will make sure that your questions are addressed. Joining me today is Lynn Hottie. She is the Director of the Hub Program Outreach and Training here at DIR, and Michelle Griffin, who is the Assistant General Counsel here at DIR. And we also have Stephanie Harrison. She is not in this webinar with us, but she is the manager of the statewide procurements team. And this is a statewide procurement. This is establishing contracts for the cooperative contracts program here at DIR. Next slide. So we have a lot to cover today, and I mean a lot. So I'm not going to read the agenda to you, and we are not going to read the slides to you, but I wanted to give you guys this slide as a general overview of what we're going to touch on. I'll talk to you about the RFO. I'll explain the reference forms, talk about evaluation criteria. You'll get updates from the Hub office. You will get updates on the accessibility requirements for this open opportunity. Michelle is going to talk to us about the matters of law and exceptions. It is extremely important that you pay attention when Michelle is talking. I will walk you through the contract sample document and the standard terms and conditions. Those are RFO attachments 1 and 2. Give you some general information that you will need in responding. Talk to you a bit about BIDSTAMP and walk you through the buttons that are in the application that you'll use to submit. We'll have a brief break, and then I will start answering questions that are received via the question function in this webinar, as well as answering some of the frequently asked questions that we received prior to this pre-bid conference. I will say we did receive 11 plus pages of questions so far. So I don't have time on this webinar to read all of the questions and answers, but we will be posting those materials very quickly after the webinar has concluded. Next slide. So, but first, these are things I want you to know. Yes, we are recording this conference and we will be posting it as an addendum on the ESBD or the Electronic State Business Daily. We will also post the slides that you see today on the ESBD. I will also give you a list of almost 500 of you on the ESBD as an addendum. Everything that you see today, including the audio recording, will be made available to you via an addendum on the ESBD. I will try to get that addendum out this week. I would like to get it out today. That might not be possible. There's a lot of attendees and we have a lot of cleanup to do before we can get that on there, but we will get it out as quickly as possible. It is your responsibility to check the ESBD frequently for updates from DIR on this solicitation. If you are hearing me say ESBD or Electronic State Business Daily and you don't know what it is, you need to find a friend. You are behind the curve here because that is the primary means of communication regarding updates on this opportunity. You can, throughout this webinar, submit questions electronically at any time using the Q&A tab or the questions tab. I may or may not answer them as I am going through. It depends on what we have going on the screen, but we are keeping those questions, logging those questions, and we will answer them on the ESBD in an addendum for you. So don't feel like they are disappearing into the ether. Next slide, Tracy. So the overview of this deliverables-based information technology services RFO. We are trying to solicit responses from you all to provide deliverables-based information technology services or DBITS services to the state of Texas and the DIR customers. This is not a single contract for use by DIR. This is the establishment of a master contract for multiple respondents to provide these services on a customer by customer basis. We are looking for 4 primary categories, and these are outlined in the RFO for you. Application development, maintenance and support, and technology upgrade, migration, and transformation, including enterprise resource planning or ERP. That is our first technology category. The second is the business intelligence, data management, analytics, and automation, including data warehousing. Our third technology category is information technology assessments, planning, independent verification and validation, market research, procurement advisory and contract implementation services. And finally, the fourth category that we are looking for is project and program management. Next slide. So when we award contracts, these will be $0 contracts. It is a master contract. It is giving awarded vendors the opportunity to sell these services to the DIR customers. You can pursue more than one technology category. You can choose just to go for one, or you can go for all 4. Our intent is to make these DBITS contracts coterminous. So that means each contract is all going to end on the same date. It is in your best interest to get your contract awarded as early as possible so that you have as much time as possible able to sell your services to the customers. The longer it takes you to negotiate a contract with us, the shorter your contract will be overall. I will cut off awards at some point. I will not go beyond 6 months with the number of contracts that we are awarding. So if you are dragging your feet and not being responsive and you are selected for negotiations and I cannot get you to a contract within that window, I will send you a cease to negotiate letter. Once your contracts are awarded, customers will solicit their services that they need from you based on your technology category. They will either submit you a statement of work using the template that DIR has provided as part of this RFO package. They may use that template, cross out statement of work and replace it with their own name for that document, or call it a request for offer or a request for proposal. But they are all the same thing. They are generically seeking services using the DIR contracts. You have to have the technology category that they are seeking under in order to be eligible to respond and receive an award for that category for that customer. Next slide. So what does DBITS mean? It means that this is a contract for deliverables-based IT services. It is a service contract. It means that you can only submit an invoice to your customers that you are awarded statements of work from after your deliverable that you agreed to is accepted and completed. It means that rate card services are not allowed under DBITS. There are no hourly bill rates allowed under the DBITS vehicle. It means you cannot sell products under this contract. So if you have a total solution and you are going to sell your services to maintain a product or a solution that you've developed, that customer cannot buy that solution or product under your DBITS contract. The customers are required to start a separate procurement process before they can buy that, and your product or service or product or solution may not end up being ultimately selected by the customer because they have to follow state of Texas procurement laws. And just so you know, we do check. DIR does review all statements of work and potential awards for state agency customers. We read the customer statement of work as a draft before it is submitted to you as a holder of a technology category. And then once you have reached agreement with a customer and are awarded that statement of work, DIR does a final review. You may not be paid under Texas state law until DIR signs off on that draft or that final contract. So I am going to repeat that because it is important that you understand. Even if you enter into a contract with a customer, if DIR does not approve the overall contract, you cannot get paid. That customer is prohibited by statute from paying you until DIR has approved that final contract. So we are going to check to make sure that you have not included rate card services and that you have not included products or solutions. So don't waste your time or the customer's time proposing those when you're responding to customer solicitations. Next slide. So this should be familiar to you if you have seen the RFO. This is the list of documents that make up the RFO package that is on the ESBD. The attachments are the things that are going to end up rolling into any awarded contract. The exhibits are the items that you're going to fill out or respond to and send back to me. Next slide. So we've talked about what we are seeking. We're looking for offerings in these 4 categories. Next slide. So we have combined the existing DBITS categories to come up with the 4 categories. For application development, maintenance, and support, and all of the rest of that, DIR has combined app dev, app maintenance and support, technology upgrade, migration and transformation, and ERP into a single technology category. You may include references and projects which fall into any of those service types in the first bullet. So you do not have to provide a reference that covers all of that. You do not have to provide project experience that covers all of that. You can just provide us with specific information about either app dev or about enterprise resource planning or about the work that you've done in technology upgrade, migration, and transformation. So it's not all inclusive when we are doing the evaluation. It is the category itself is inclusive of all of those items. So please refer to RFO section 221 regarding specific details about what's contained in those or this technology category. Next slide. Next is our business intelligence, data management, analytics, and automation, and data warehousing. So the existing categories of BI data warehousing has been combined with the data management, analytics, and automation to create this category. And that automation piece does include AI or artificial intelligence and RPA, robotic process automation. So again, as before, you can include your experience with any of these subsets of this technology category, and your references can talk about your experience providing those services. It does not have to be all inclusive. And this is covered in section 2.2.2 of the RFO. Next slide.
All or nothing for those categories, or if a vendor cannot provide all services in a particular category?
It is not all or nothing for any of these categories. You can choose any subset of it as long as it is part of that category. Provide your reference and your experience. But you do not have to show me proof that you can do every subset to be eligible to receive an award in that category. So for the next category, information technology, assessments, planning, independent verification and validation, market research, procurement advisory, blah, blah, blah. We combined the IT assessments and planning, IV&V, and the procurement assistance categories into this one piece. Again, you do not have to do an all or nothing. Provide the subset that you have experience with. And you can review section 2.2.3 of the RFO for more information on this. Next slide. Finally, we have project and program management. So here we have added program management to make that clear to the project management category that existed before. Whatever experience you have with either program management or project management may be included, and details regarding this category are available in RFO section 2.2.4. Next slide. So the term of this contract, you will notice that it was not in the RFO. The term of the contract is addressed in the contract sample, which is attachment 1 to the RFO. It is in section 2. So the initial term of any contract awarded will be up to 2 years, commencing on the last date of the signature. And there are 2 optional 1-year renewals to this contract. So this is a direct copy and paste from that. If you have not read the contract sample document, shame on you, because that is what the actual contract will be. So read and review the contract sample to find important information like the term of the contract and other terms and conditions that you will be responsible for meeting should you be awarded a contract. Also review attachment 2, and I will go into more detail about that in a later slide. Next slide, please, Tracy. Schedule of events. This is a tight procurement schedule, but you all have known this is coming for quite a few months. We have purposefully cut the amount of information that we expect to see back from you all as respondents to the RFO, so that we are only looking at the information that is pertinent and that will help us get to a contract award to make sure that we can meet these timelines. So I posted this on the 15th. Questions to get answered at this conference were due the 18th. And thank you to all of you all who got your questions in on time. We are now having the pre-proposal conference. In case you didn't know, that's where you're at. RFO questions in general are due by July 16th. Your responses are due, including your reference forms from your references, on July 26th at 2:00 p.m. That 2:00 p.m. is super important, because if you get it to me at 2:01, it is automatically rejected. Do not wait to the last minute. If you are not loading your documents at least 30 minutes beforehand, you are running the risk of losing all of the work that you put into that proposal. So make sure that you are getting those loaded as quickly as you can. We expect to do evaluations, any clarifications, and negotiations for contract award, starting in August through the month of September. Now, if all 500 of you submit responses, it might take me a little longer to get my evaluation team to do those evaluations. I will try to communicate to you all as effectively and quickly as possible if there are schedule changes. But right now, that is my goal. And contract awards, currently, I anticipate having all contracts awarded for DBITS no later than the end of October. But Colleen, how will you do that? It took 3 years last time. Well, I did this on ITSAC, so I know it is possible. We awarded 161 contracts in 2 months with ITSAC. So it is possible, as long as you and I partner together to make sure that we are quickly answering each other's questions and working through the process. So this is why I am comfortable saying that there will be a cutoff where I will just be done awarding contracts. And if you are a straggler, you will not get a contract. And I am comfortable saying that it is safe to make these contracts coterminous. Because even if I gave you an extra month, it is only 1 month. We are not dragging these awards out. Next slide. So here is what you need to send me. And there's a handy dandy table in the RFO for you. You absolutely have to send me items 1 through 7 under this required. I have to have that respondent information form. It must be signed. And I will say this at least 3 more times in this presentation. That is a disqualifiable offense if you send me a form that is not signed. You have to complete Exhibit B, respondent experience. That is the primary means of evaluation for your response. If I don't get an Exhibit B, you don't get a contract. Exhibit C, contract marketing and customer support plan. This is 20% of your overall score. You need to do that. Take the time to make sure you have thought through how you will market and grow and support your customers. I need to get reference forms. I know you are all truthful, just like George Washington. However, I need the references to validate for me that you have experience. And they have to take the initiative to send the forms back to me. You cannot send the reference forms to me. I need to get them from the reference. I also need you to include the respondent release of liability for reference. If I get a reference form back and there are questions that I have for that reference, and I don't have the release of liability, I can't talk to the reference to clarify anything. So you need to get me those forms for each reference. You absolutely, and these last two are disqualifiable offenses. We won't even look at your stuff. The VADSR, or the Vendor Accessibility Development Services Information Request Form, and the Vendor Policy Driven Adoption for Accessibility. You are required to fill those out. If you have questions about how to fill out those forms, send them to me using the question and answer period, and I will give them to my accessibility coordinator so that you can get answers to your questions. But these are required. Failure to submit one of these two forms will result in you being disqualified. So I need both of them back. Now, optional. You may send back exceptions. I highly encourage you not to, but you may. You can also send me duplicates of the files listed above, marked with proprietary, confidential, or redacted, so that in the event of a public information request, we can easily send that information out. Otherwise, if you provide information that you don't want us to share with the vendor community at large when we get a PIR, we are going to release that information if you have not included separate files that are marked appropriately. Next slide. Exhibit A, respondent information form. You have to fill the whole thing out. It's 2 pages. I think you can do it. And you have to get it signed by someone who can bind your company, or someone who is able to say that the bid that you have submitted will be able to be turned into a contract. You will be disqualified if this is not done. For Exhibit B, you need to answer every question and be as detailed as you can be within the constraints of page limitations, because this is what the evaluators are going to look at. Each question on Exhibit B will be scored. You will get points awarded for it. If you do not fill it out or you put in A, it is possible that you will get no points for that, and that will affect your standing amongst the other 499 respondents to this RFO. You have to do the Exhibit C, contract marketing support plan. I get a lot of questions about this, so I'm going to address a little bit right now. You need to describe how you think you will be able to support and promote this contract. What is your strategy? Yes, you can mark this as confidential so that I don't release it in the event of a open records request, but it is up to you to do those markings. We do evaluate this. We look at this to make sure that you can actually support a contract. And if you look at RFO section 1.4.5, the DIR current contract spend by category, you will see a lot of money goes through these contracts. So the customer support plan is extremely important to us. Do not farm this out. Do not get someone else to write this unless you are prepared to read it, or you are prepared to have 6 other vendors using your same proposal writer. And we'll see what happens in the evaluation. This is going to be a highly competitive procurement. So I cannot stress enough that you put thought into this. 20% of your overall response points is going to this category. Next slide. Your reference forms. So I've got a slide that's going to kind of explain the reference forms to you, because for my ITSAC vendors who are on the call, there was some confusion. But I want to make sure that you all understand this has to come directly from your reference to DIR. We have updated it to make it clear that we want projects and references within the last 5 years. But I want to make sure that you are contacting references and you are coordinating with your references so that they will email that form to me by the bid due date. Now, I don't want to get 500 emails asking, did you get my references yet? Did you get my references yet? So here's my hint. Tell your reference to CC you on the email that they send to me. And I respond directly to the reference and whoever else they have CC'd, acknowledging receipt of that form. You then will be able to track your reference progress and you won't wonder, did I get 1, 2, or 3 references? Because you will have been copied on all of the reference forms and you will see that Colleen has accepted them because she has responded to the reference saying DIR acknowledges receipt. I am going to get a lot of reference forms because it's up to 12 times, potentially 500 respondents who are going to be sending me forms. So I will not take the time to answer your individual vendor questions about the number of references you receive, or to tell you that, oh, it looks like you've only got 1 for this technology category. A lot is going to be going on in these next few weeks. So talk to your reference, let them know that it's coming, tell them to CC you, and you can track it. We talked about the respondent release of liability, and we talked about the BADSR and vendor PVAA. I will tell you, exhibits F and G, this is a new policy for DIR. So if you have had contracts with DIR in the past, and you've responded to DIR proposals in the past and have been allowed to submit these forms at a later date or during the contract negotiation phase, that is not going to happen here. I have to get them with your initial response. If I do not get them, I am not going to clarify. I am just going to disqualify you and move to the next vendor in the row. So be aware and be prepared for that. Next slide. Signed addenda. We will be issuing a series of addenda to the RFO posting. We'll be doing that because we are going to be doing a rolling question and answer, which means I am not going to wait until July 16 to answer the thousands of emails that come in with questions from vendors. I'm going to be answering them in a bunch. For example, I have answered the 65 questions that we have already received to date. It is ready to go out and be posted in an addenda when we get the materials together from this pre-solicitation conference. If I get more vendors or more questions in over the next few days, I will publish another addendum next week and another the following week, answering those questions in a batch. I will also include questions that have been asked that have not been answered, just so that you know I have received your question and I am pending a response. That is also for those of you who may have the same question to see and go, oh, so-and-so has already asked it, although you won't know so-and-so. You'll say someone has already asked my question. I will not then send another question that Colleen has to log and manage, because I know that DIR is already working on an answer to that question. Hopefully this means that we will not end up with a question and answer log that is over 100 pages long, and that you do not have to slog through all 100 pages to find the answer that you are looking for. So if you can, I am asking you as my partners to read the questions that were submitted and not ask the same question that has already been acknowledged or answered. When you are submitting your response using the BIDSTAMP portal, you need to make sure you hit the word submit prior to the due date and time. The system, it has an auto lock. So if you are at 1:59 and you have not hit submit, you may not be able to hit submit, because the second it turns to 2 o'clock, it locks. You need to make sure that you hit submit in advance. You will know that you did it right because the submit button turns to withdraw. Once you've hit submit, you will also, or should also, if your system is not filtering them out, get a system generated email saying that DIR has accepted your response. If those things do not happen and you've allowed enough time that you can send me a question before 2 o'clock, let me know immediately so that I can help you. If you encounter any issues with the BIDSTAMP BIS, you have to let me know immediately. If I do not know of it before 2 o'clock p.m. on the due date and time, I cannot help you. If you come to me 5 minutes late, 30 minutes late, or 2 weeks late, I will treat it all the same. The due date and time has passed. So let me know immediately. This is the time where 1 minute makes a huge difference when it comes to getting your bid in. You guys are going to put a lot of time and effort into this. I don't want you to waste that effort. Make sure that you are prepared. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about the contract sample and the terms and conditions. Next slide, Tracy. So as I stated before, the contract sample is the template we will use to award your contract. Whatever is in there, I expect you to abide by unless you've taken exception. Once we have made the determination of who is getting an award, I'm going to send an email out and I'm going to request the information from your company to complete section 1.1 parties, section 7 notification, and the signature page. So be on the lookout for those emails. Should you be accepted for award, that'll be in the September timeframe. Don't go on vacation and have an auto forward to someone else. Or a please contact so-and-so in the first probably 2 to 3 weeks of September, because that's when I'm going to be letting you know I need this information. So I am instructing you right now to review this sample as part of the RFO. Take any exceptions to the contents that you need to take and include them with your initial response. You won't get a chance later, especially when we're reviewing the draft contracts and I'm ready to award. And if you see something and you go, oh, but wait, I can't agree to that. I can't give you a contract. You have missed your window for exceptions. It has to happen now. If you take an exception, you will include it with your response in the response file using your 3-letter identifier, 553 to indicate the procurement number, and exemptions. I want those in an Excel document because I will be using those Excel documents to determine which clauses Michelle needs to look at, because 490 of the 500 vendors took exception to. More likely, and I will tell you, I saw this on ITSAC, there are very few exceptions that are actually taken to the standard terms and conditions. So if you are the only vendor or one of 2 to 5 vendors who take exceptions to a particular clause, you will hear from me saying, DIR has decided not to negotiate this clause, because the vast majority of respondents receiving a contract award took no exception to it. So that's a little heads up. Next page. Standard terms and conditions. Not only do I need you, the pursuer, to review this document, I highly recommend you get your legal counsel to review this document. The standard terms and conditions are the standard for a reason. Everyone who gets a contract typically agrees to everything that's within those standard T's and C's. And this is your one shot to take exceptions to them. If you take exceptions to the standard terms and conditions, in addition to the file, the Excel file labeled exceptions, I want a Word document where you have redlined the standard terms and conditions attachment that we provided, showing me your changes in line. So if you are proposing alternative text, I want that written out in the exceptions table, and then I want to see what the alternative text looks like in line using the track changes function of Word. You can turn that into a PDF if you're afraid that I'm going to change what you've done, but I need to see it in context. Michelle needs to see it in context. Failure to provide both of those documents when you've taken exceptions to the standard T's and C's may mean that we outright reject any exceptions that you take. So be prepared. Next slide. Your reference forms. Next slide. I cannot say this enough, and I'm doing this because on ITSEC, I had vendors who did not listen to me and sent their reference forms to me instead of having their references send them to me. I will not count them. They will not be given to the evaluator. You will be scored 0 for that component. The reference form has to come directly from the client that you serve in whatever capacity that you're provided services. DIR is not responsible if your references do not actually send their forms in. You need to have a reference that you've selected, that you have a good relationship with, that you trust with something as important as getting a contract with DIR. And they have to use the form provided. I know I've had a few of you ask, can I use my own company forms? Typically, I don't mind. For the reference forms in particular, I need you to use the form that's provided. Each one of those questions on that form will have its own score associated with it. So those need to be completely filled out and provided to DIR by the reference. And I need the reference forms to be about the category that you are pursuing. So don't send me a reference because you provided auto body work to someone, but they really liked you. I need to see something that ties to the technology category for DBITS.
Can it be one reference for multiple categories, or do they need to solicit per category references? How many references?
So I just got a question from the audience, i.e. Mary Vickery. Is that one reference, can one reference cover multiple categories, or does it need to be one reference per category? One reference can serve for multiple categories if you provided multiple categories of work on that project. Just make sure it is clear on the form that that is what you are doing. And if each reference was a discrete reference for one piece of work for each category, that means I could get up to 12 references per vendor if they are pursuing all 4 categories. So it's 3 references per category, technology category that you're pursuing. And if there's no overlap, that would be up to 12 references that I would have for your file. And again, I cannot say it enough. I am not scoring them if they do not come directly from your reference. If they come from you, I will add it to your file with a note, not received from reference, and they will not be scored. Next slide, please, Tracy. So before you send this reference form to your reference, fill out the top portion. You can see it in the red box here. I will not be able to match your reference to your company if this is not filled out. On ITSAC, I did not stress this enough, and I ended up doing some serious detective work, trying to make sure that the companies got all of the references that came in for them. You, the vendor who is responding, fill this part out. And you can see the first thing that you fill out is your name. Hi, I am ABC Company. I was the prime contractor on this engagement, or the prime contractor was my friend, Wiley Coyote. I was the subcontractor on this engagement. So you'll fill that out and let me know which role you played. And if you were not the prime and you were the subcontractor, that's okay, as long as your reference can talk about the work that you and your company perform. I need to know the date of performance. Like I said, this needs to be within the last 5 years. The total estimated contract dollar amount, I am not so concerned with. You don't have to give me the exact amount, give me a ballpark. It's really more important to me that the project contract description is in line with the work that you are pursuing on this RFO. So you need to fill that out. This will also help your reference. You could jog their memory about the work that you perform so that they will give you a better reference. This is benefit for you. And I will then easily be able to match it to your company, which means it'll get scored right and you'll earn more points and maybe get a contract. So please pay attention to this. Next slide. Now your reference will fill out this bottom bit of the form. So this is page 2. They need to give me their name, the date that they are providing the reference. So that is just whatever day it is that they decide that they're going to fill this form out for you. I want them to tell me their organization. And I did get references on ITSAC. I had no clue what entity they belonged with. So it would be very helpful. So I know what organization it was if I need to follow up with them for something. Their title. So I know what work they perform at that company, their phone number, and an email address. This is all so that I can follow up if there were issues with the transmission, if there were content questions that I needed to follow up on. Sometimes the reference is actually not the person to me with the reference. Particularly if you are using the VPs or the executive directors of agencies as your reference, they don't email that to me. Their secretary might, or what are they, admin assistants? Their admin assistant might. So I need to know who I need to ask for. So make sure that they fill this part out. Next slide. Evaluation criteria. Now I got everything that I need. I've opened the boxes. What am I going to do? I'm going to start with RFO section 4.1. We're going to do a financial review to make sure your company is not about to go out of business due to bankruptcy. We are going to do a check of the hub subcontracting plan to make sure that you filled that out correctly and just signed it and we're good to go. And I'm going to look for your signature on your Exhibit A. These are all pass-fail. These are the first things that we look at. And if you fail, you do not get a contract. You do not move forward. You don't pass go. There will be no collecting of $200. We might be able to clarify specific points or portions of your response. So like if you submitted an Exhibit E in your packet and the Exhibit E had missing information, I can clarify that. But I am not going to go back to you and say, hey, you didn't submit an Exhibit E. Where is that? Or you didn't submit your Exhibit B respondent experience. I cannot do anything for you if you do not provide me with the document by the due date and time. So make sure everything is in there. Once we have cleared and determined that we have what we need to score, it moves to the evaluators. The evaluators are going to score Exhibit B, respondent experience, and the 3 completed Exhibit D reference forms per category. So remember that could be up to 12, depending on the number of categories that you're pursuing. That is 80%, 80 of the 100% of the points that you will get. So bear that in mind. Spend time on your Exhibit B answers, as well as working with your references to make sure that they are going to submit it. If you don't have 3 people who can speak on your behalf for the work that you did in a particular category, you will not be penalized. I will not say, oh, you lose a third of the points for everyone that is missing. We will score what we get. But the 3 is a safety net. That is what we expect to see. If you can find 3 people, you will likely get at least one of them to respond. So just be aware, I am not going to penalize you if I only get 1 form or 2 forms. But ask at least 3 people, because at least then you will have 1. The evaluators do make that, that review and determination, and they score you based on what they have in front of them. If we got 5 for your company, because you know you really are friends with Wile E. Coyote, and 5 references came in and everybody is great, I will only look at the first 3. The other 2 will be stored in your file. After the procurement is closed and all contracts are awarded, I can provide those forms to you if you were not CC'd, but I know you all will be because you listened and paid attention here. But we will only score up to 3 references. And then finally, the Exhibit C, contract marketing and customer support plan, 20% of your score. This is not a throwaway. This is a big portion of the score, especially when you consider competitive breaks on ITSAC, where we had 350 respondents, were less than 1 point because everybody did such a good job. So I want you to make sure that you are spending time on this and giving that contract marketing and customer support plan the attention it needs, and not losing the bid because you did not spend time here. Next slide. Competitive range. So I just mentioned on ITSAC the competitive range and how close it was. This is how we determine the competitive range. We are going to look at the overall scores, and that is the column that is the right next to the red column. Those are the scores for the vendors. They're the cumulative score. On ITSAC, it had VPTS counted as a score. But we just add your score for the experience to your score plus for the marketing plan to get that 84 through 82 range. We then determine what the average break is between the scores. And on this one, the average break was something like 1.3. So anything that is higher than a 1.3 difference between any 2 ranks represents the competitive break. So for this competitive range, the competitive break between getting a contract and not getting a contract was 0.21 points. That is how competitive this field is. It's actually more competitive. We have more interest in DBITS than we had in ITSAC. Once we have identified where all of those breaks lie, and there could be multiple breaks, DIR will make that determination about which break point determines the competitive range, and everybody above that break point will get the contract award, and anyone below that will get a nice letter thanking them for their participation and offering to give them a debrief so that they have an opportunity to learn where they can perform better next time. But as you can see, we do have a process. It's very well thought out, and it's very mathematical for my math nerds in the audience. So we use Excel to make sure that there are no math errors. Next slide. So once we've determined the competitive break, I will send you an invitation to negotiate. Next slide. I will notify you if you have been determined to be successful. I will also send you an email at the same time, letting your company know if you were not successful in your pursuit. I don't want anyone to be wondering what's going on. You will get an email from me. Successful respondents, if you're in that group, you need to be prepared to act quickly to make sure that we can get your contract awarded in an expeditious fashion. You all right now need to make sure that your organization allows emails from addresses that end at dir.texas.gov. Because if you miss an email from me, I don't have time necessarily to follow up with 4 different emails and contacting all of the people that were listed on your form and a phone call to try to get you a contract. I guarantee you there's enough competition in this DBITS category that I don't have to pursue you. I will have plenty of options for customers to use these contracts. So make sure that you do not miss that information. Next slide. And we will then start the contract award process once those negotiation emails go out. And I'm going to notify you all at once if I'm awarding 50 or 200 contracts. And no, I don't know how many I'm awarding yet. You will all be awarded at once. I will assign you all draft contract numbers based on the scoring rank. So if you scored the highest and you are ranked number 1, you will get the first contract number. So it'll be like 0001 to represent your rank. And then everybody else is ranked given a contract number based on their rank. That does not mean that you will be the first person to get a contract. We will start awarding any of the successful respondents based on how quickly the information is provided to DIR when I send that negotiation email out to all y'all. So a respondent who is ranked 100 may end up with a contract before a respondent who is ranked number 1, because the respondent who was ranked 100 got the information that I needed to move that contract along back to me before the respondent who was ranked number 1. We are not waiting for one contract to get awarded before we move to the next. You can't do that and get contracts awarded in the 2-month period. And I know you all want to get to work as soon as possible. We will then look at, based on those responses, if you have exceptions. So you might be the fastest person back to me with your information, but you took 6 pages of exceptions. I will start the process with you, but you may actually end up falling further and further down the list because of the difficulty we are having with your exceptions in getting you to agreement. I can't award contracts unless the exceptions are completely removed or DIR reaches agreement on the exceptions that were taken. Michelle is one person. Michelle can only negotiate these exceptions with you as fast as she can move. And there's only so many hours in the day. So if you have taken exceptions and there are excessive exceptions, do not be surprised when your friends and colleagues are walking around with contracts and receiving work while you are still negotiating. So be aware. When I send that invitation to negotiate out to you, I will give you the option to remove your exceptions that you have taken. I may also tell you in that letter that, hey, you took exception to this clause. You're the only respondent who took exception to this. Are you sure you want to hold this exception? And I will give you that opportunity to reconsider. I might give you 2 or 3 opportunities to reconsider before you drop to the bottom of the heap. So just be aware your exceptions and how pertinent they are and how important they are to your company. DIR has marked some of the sections in the standard terms and conditions with red that says no exceptions will be entertained. We are serious about that. If you take exceptions to those red categories, the ones that say we will not negotiate exceptions, we will not negotiate that exception, and we may not decide to award a contract to you because you took exception to an area that is marked no exceptions. We may also make the determination that your exceptions indicate that you will not be a good partner for our customers. We are not the beneficiaries of these contracts. Our customers will be using them. And DIRA, the agency side of DIR, may also be a customer. So we are going to be looking at that as well. So be aware, only ask for those exceptions that are legally necessary. And Michelle's going to talk to you and reiterate what I have said in a few slides. The greater the number of exceptions taken, the longer it will take for us to get to work on your contract award. Next slide. We will cease to negotiate if you are being unresponsive, and I have tried every contact number that I can find for you, or I have tried you multiple times. We won't move forward. This includes if my hub office has to keep harassing you to get the updated hub information to make sure that you are compliant with state law, we will cease to negotiate. We will cease to negotiate if it is clear that we can't get you into compliance. For example, if you can't get the necessary paperwork together with the Secretary of State to be certified to be able to do business in Texas, I can't wait for months for you to figure that out. We will just cease to negotiate. And finally, we will cease to negotiate when we have remaining exceptions and DIR determines that further negotiations will be fruitful. Once we have said we cannot negotiate further, and we tell you that, and you say, well, we can't accept it without, as it is, how about this? We will cease to negotiate. That will be your final opportunity to remove that exception that we are telling you we cannot move on. We don't have the time. It is not in the state's best interest to keep working with a vendor where we cannot reach agreement on items that are important to the legislator, important to our customers, or covered by statutory compliance. So if we cease to negotiate with vendors, it does not mean that we will then expand the competitive range. I don't have a set number of contracts that are awarded. So if 10 vendors fall off, that doesn't mean I'm bringing 10 vendors on to make sure that I hit an arbitrary number. We are not doing that necessarily. So ceasing negotiations with one or more respondents does not mean that lower scoring respondents are moving up. And I am not guaranteeing a number of minimum contracts. It will be determined by the competitive range. It will be determined by making sure that there is enough coverage in each of the 4 categories that our customers have options. But that does not mean that I have to award all of the contracts that are in that competitive rate. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lynn with the hub talk.
Thanks, Colleen. Go to the next slide. We're going to talk about the hub subcontracting plan and requirements. And if you were paying attention when you registered for this webinar today, we asked one, if you were hub certified or not, and if you were interested in subcontracting. There was a purpose behind this. When we post this information to the addenda, we want the vendors to be able to use it. We want the vendors to be able to identify who is in attendance and who is hub certified and whether or not they're interested in subcontracting. So use that information once it is posted out there for you. Now, there is a hub subcontracting plan included and required for this procurement. So don't be shocked or surprised. It is included in there. We've included the link to the most current hub subcontracting plan that is owned and operated by the Comptroller's Office. You need to click on the link embedded in the RFO and go out to that hub subcontracting plan. You need to complete the plan, print it off, sign it, or attach an electronic signature and upload that completed hub subcontracting plan through the VIS portal. Next slide. So, failure to complete or provide a completed hub subcontracting plan will result in your response being rejected, just like Colleen stated, and we mean it. So pay attention, make sure you follow the instructions, but you, the responding vendor, gets to determine how you can best fulfill this contract. And that can be through one of three methods. That can be either through self-performing, that can be through method A, meaning you're going to meet or exceed the hub goal for this procurement, or through method B, meaning you're going to subcontract, but you're not going to meet that hub goal. So pay attention and make sure you complete the correct corresponding good faith effort method. Next slide. So the goal for this procurement, the hub goal, is 26%. That is for subcontracting. So even if you're a hub and you're responding to this procurement, you're required to complete a hub subcontracting plan. And it's indicative in the name, subcontracting. So no, if you're a prime respondent, you're not going to necessarily meet that subcontracting goal by self-performing. But again, you get to determine how you're going to best fulfill this contract. So if you're going to subcontract and you're going to subcontract with hub certified vendors and you're going to meet or exceed that 26% goal, then you're going to complete method A, which means you're going to complete sections 1, 2, 4, and method A attachment A. And when you complete method A attachment A, ensure that the percentage for all of the vendors that you break out, that total equals what you identified in section 2. Make sure you provide all of the VID numbers. If you don't know what a VID is, call me. I'll explain it to you. All the VID numbers for the vendors that you're going to use, hub or non-hub, all of the vendor names, all of the approximate dollar amounts, and all of the percentages. And you're going to ask, well, I don't know what the sales are going to be through this contract. I don't know. Well, you're going to be putting together a marketing plan. So you have an idea of what you anticipate your sales being, or you have a target. So it's going to be inclusive of what that target is going to be. So make sure you include all of that information. Next slide. So if you're going to subcontract, but you're not going to be meeting that hub goal of 26%, you'll need to complete method B. So you're going to complete sections 1, 2, 4, and method B, attachment B of the hub subcontracting plan. Now this method is a little more involved. You must solicit a minimum of 3 hub certified vendors and 2 minority trade organizations. And you must allow them 7 working days to respond to you. And this is 7 working days prior to the due date of this RFO. Now you need to keep a copy of your solicitation to these vendors and these minority trade organizations, because if I ask for these, you must produce these. You can save us all some time and you can submit those along with your AD if you choose to do so. But you have to have proof of your solicitation of those 3 hubs and 2 minority trade organizations. So within that method B, once you've solicited those companies and entities, then in section B4, you're going to identify those vendors that you're actually going to subcontract with. And again, you must provide the VID numbers, the vendor names, the approximate dollar amounts, and the percentages. And then under there, you're going to provide a justification. So don't forget to complete each of those sections within method B. Next slide. So if you determine that you're not going to be subcontracting, that means you will self-perform. And doing that and completing the hub subcontracting plan, you will complete sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. And within section 3, you're going to provide your justification on how you plan on self-performing this contract. So you need to provide a short description on how, with your company's own resources, staff, and or equipment, you will self-perform this contract, which you can do. Please don't make us any empty promises that should you be awarded the contract, you'll go out and look for subcontractors. The intent of you telling us you're going to self-perform is you're actually going to self-perform this contract. So tell us how you're going to do that. Also, do not reference in section 3, somewhere in your response to the RFO, how you plan on fulfilling this contract. We do not see any other documents from your response. The only thing we get is that hub subcontracting plan. So make sure you give us that description within section 3 on how you plan on self-performing. Make sure you sign and date your HSP before you upload that and submit it through the portal. Next slide. Now we here at DIR, you can ask us questions. You can ask the hub program questions on how to complete the hub subcontracting plan for this RFO. We also will provide you a complimentary review of your completed HSP prior to you submitting that through the portal. We can look at that HSP once you believe you have completed it correctly, and we can tell you, yes, you have completed it correctly, or no, I see these errors and this is what you need to correct. We ask that you give us, don't wait till 5 days before this RFO is due. We have other work that's going on. We have other procurements that are going on, and we will not have time at that point to stop and review that for you. And if there are any edits that you need to make and you need those 7 working days to solicit vendors, you're not going to have the time to do it. So really, we ask for 10 working days, but we'll do it up to 7 working days. That should give you enough time. So if you'll send that to our DIR Hub email box at dir.hub@dir.texas.gov, one of our staff members will be happy to look at that and review that for you and let you know if you have completed it correctly. Please take us up on this offer. There are numerous respondents here, and I would hate for your response to be rejected because you failed to complete your HSP correctly. And we will reject you if you complete that incorrectly. We have numerous respondents, and we don't have time to go back after the fact and ask questions and help you clean this up. If you do it incorrectly, you're going to fail. We're not going to review your response. So take us up on our offer, send us an email. We're happy to answer those questions. We're happy to help you. We're happy to walk you through it to help you complete that form. So reach out to us. We are a resource for you, and these are questions we can answer for you. Do not ask me, well, I was thinking about this for my response or that for my response. I'm going to stop you right there, and I'm going to tell you all I can discuss with you is how to complete the form. Thank you. Have a nice day. So if you have any questions regarding that HSP form, please direct those to us. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Mary or Colleen for accessibility.
Okay, this is Mary. I'm going to talk a little bit about the exhibits F and G, which is the electronic information and resource accessibility forms. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. As you can see here, there is reference to government code that requires state agencies and institutions of higher education, to comply with accessibility standards. Those standards are defined and further clarified through TAC 206, 213, and also the other links there that are provided through the World Wide Web Consortium, as well as WCAG 2.0. Accordingly, vendors are required to provide accessibility documentation. And if you go ahead and go to the next slide, This particular RFO has two sets of accessibility requirement documents that are required. Exhibit F is the Vendor Accessibility Development Services Information Request, or VADSR, as we refer to it. And this is a document that you would need to fill out to help us to be able to determine your ability in being able to develop and maintain offerings that are within the information and communications technology offering types category. So it needs, we need to see how you are going to be able to provide accessibility. I would strongly advise, don't try to fill this out yourself. Get with your accessibility people, get with your technical people to make sure, that this information is being filled out correctly. We do review the information. Our statewide accessibility coordinator, is involved in the review, and sometimes it can be obvious when the questions, the responses are not being answered by a technical person that knows how your business will address these. Exhibit G, that is an Excel document, and it needs to be completed within the actual document itself. This is Exhibit D is called PDAA, or Policy Driven Adoption for Accessibility. And what DIR is looking for with this exhibit is your maturity level with the accessibility requirements. Are you striving towards being able to meet those accessibility requirements? You don't have to be necessarily like score 3 on all categories. We need to see that there is growth there, though. And again, as I mentioned, be sure to fill out the Excel document. Must be completed in that. Follow the form, and it'll provide it provides the information that we need to be there for reviewing. Okay. Next slide. Okay, this is kind of what I just went over as far as the VADSR document, Exhibit F. Whenever vendors are providing website development, some type of web application development, custom development services, these are things that, when we do request that the VADSR be completed. For this RFO, you need to complete the VADSR. Just be aware that, please be as thorough as you can. And like I said, get with the proper people within your business to ensure that you're filling it out, completely and as accurately as possible. There may be instances where we may need to reach out to you for additional information. But, we try to have to limit to go back as much as possible. Okay, next slide. Again, as a PDAA, as I mentioned, this addresses the maturity level of the accessibility programs. This is us being able to see, look into, your ability as far as being able to, develop, accessible offerings. We map those results, and then these are things that you can also be using for yourself as a roadmap to see, where are areas that maybe we need to look at improving upon. And as I mentioned, and we'll say it again, just to make sure everybody's hearing me, be sure and complete the PDAA form, within the Excel file, and, return it in that format. Okay, next slide. If you would like additional information regarding accessibility, the EIR accessibility, here are a couple of links within the DIR website that can provide you some additional information. Okay, thank you. I think, there we go. Turning it over to Michelle now.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Michelle Griffin. I'm Assistant General Counsel with BIR. I'm just going to give you an overview of some of the legal considerations in this bid process, but this is not comprehensive, so please consult with your legal counsel if you have any questions about any of these issues or anything else that comes up in the process. Next slide, please. So first, I want to talk a little bit more about exceptions. Colleen gave you a nice overview, and we just want to run through it again, just to make sure that you know how serious we are about this. As you could probably tell, we are not fond of excessive and unnecessary exceptions. It does take up a lot of our time, and you will see that the standard terms and conditions, if you've had contracts with BIR before, a lot of these will be very familiar to you. These terms have been heavily vetted. Most of them have been used for quite some time, with minor modifications. So many vendors and customers have already reviewed and accepted these terms and conditions without issue and without requesting any exceptions. So remember, as Colleen said, that whether you take exceptions and the number of exceptions you take is a factor that will be considered in determining whether or not you're going to get a contract award. So by taking numerous exceptions, you might be taking yourself out of the running. With that said, if you have to request exceptions, you have to follow the prescribed format. You're going to need, as Colleen went over, both an Excel file and a red line draft of attachment 2. Please make sure that these match. We don't have time to go through both and make sure that you've made the same exceptions in both formats. So they should be the same information presented 2 different ways. The most important piece of this is your explanation for the necessity for each exception. So you are required to explain to us why this term or condition is not feasible for your company. Some answers we will not accept are, well, I've had this exception in a previous contract. This is a new contract, so we're not interested in what exceptions you had previously. We also don't want to hear that you've seen another contract with this exception. Each negotiation is different, and if another company got an exception, there's probably a good reason for it. And I guarantee you that they gave us a real explanation for why they needed that exception. So we need to hear that from you as well. Next slide, please. So in taking exceptions, we recommend that you coordinate closely between your business and legal teams and make sure that each exception you take is essential for you. For those legal counsels that are not familiar with these types of negotiations, this is not your typical contract negotiation where you ask for things just to see if maybe you can get a better deal. This is a one-shot situation. So don't take exception to things that we're not legally able to change. For example, the state's right to audit, and the state, do not ask the state to indemnify you. And as Colleen said, pay close attention to the sections that are marked as non-negotiable, and don't take exceptions to those things. Also, you'll note that we are on a tight schedule. We expect many awards will be made, and we don't have time to negotiate every detail that might typically be negotiated. And as Colleen said earlier, we will not consider any exceptions that were not submitted with your bid. So please read the contract and terms and conditions very carefully before submitting your bid and before submitting exceptions, because you will not get a second chance if you notice something after the fact that you needed to take an exception to. Just consider your bid your best and final offer, because you will not get another chance to make it. Next slide, please. So for those of you that are familiar with the IR contracts, we just want to draw your attention to this one new term that has been getting some attention in recent contract negotiations. This is our data location provision. Under this provision, all state of customer data must be stored, accessed, etc., within the contiguous United States. Customers can request otherwise, but we are not negotiating on this term. We recently ended negotiations without giving an award to vendors that wouldn't accept this provision as is. So just want to make sure you're aware of this and pay close attention. Next slide, please. There we go. So again, Colleen went over this briefly. Vendors and all of the representatives are prohibited from discussing this RFO with anyone other than the designated contact, which in this case is Colleen. The sole exception, as Lynn covered earlier, is that you can reach out to her for assistance with your hub subcontracting plan. But other than that, you need to be communicating solely with Colleen. If you do have other contracts with DIR, you may discuss those contracts with the appropriate contract manager as you've typically done, but you may not discuss this RFO with that person in any way. So even seemingly innocent questions like, where is DIR in the process? Or when was that deadline again? That is prohibited. You will get in trouble and you may be disqualified if you see violations of this rule. Next slide, please. So another thing I wanted to touch on is the legal entity name that you are submitting in your bid. Please make sure to use this or to do this correctly. It seems simple, but we deal with it at least once a week. When you submit your response, make sure that you are submitting it under your entity's exact legal name. This should match the filing with the Secretary of State exactly down to the commas and periods. I do check those things. I will add or delete a comma as necessary. So we also don't want to see any abbreviations, or it's not acceptable to simply put your doing business as name. So for instance, if your entity is Smith Corporation, it is not okay to put Smith Corp or vice versa. And if you filed a DBA for Smith Industries, we still want to see the legal entity name Smith Corporation on your response documents. If you're not sure what your exact legal name is, please check with your legal team and they can help you figure that out. Getting this wrong can lead to major slowdowns. It's especially important on Exhibit A respondent information, but remember to be consistent throughout the submission so there's no confusion and we don't have to slow down the process of getting you a contract award. Next slide, please. Public Information Act. So if you have not dealt with a government contract before, this might not be something you're familiar with. But I did want to touch on it because this is an important consideration as you prepare your submission documents and as you communicate with the designated contact throughout the negotiation process. So DIR is a state agency, so we are required to comply with the Public Information Act. All information in our possession is subject to the Act. So that means that every physical and electronic document, email, attachment, etc., that you submit is going to be subject to this law as well. And the starting point is that we assume all information is public. So there are some protections for any proprietary confidential information that you might have and you might need to submit as part of this process. We are required to notify you if somebody makes a request for any of your information that is proprietary or confidential, and that will give you a chance to protect that information from release. But of course, we don't necessarily know which of your information you consider proprietary or confidential. So it's your job to tell us, and you need to do that upfront as you make your submissions and your bid. So what we ask is that you clearly mark your information if it's proprietary, confidential, or copyrighted. And please distinguish between those things where possible. If a document is not marked as confidential, we will release it if it's requested. If it is marked as confidential, we will then submit that information to the Attorney General if there's a public information request. And then the Attorney General will reach out to you and you'll have the right to object to that information being released. And ultimately, the Attorney General makes a determination about what is and is not released. As Colleen mentioned previously, you also have the option to submit duplicate redacted documents, which just makes the process easier. If somebody requests something confidential, we can send out the redacted version. A little bit of guidance in marking your documents. As I said, please distinguish copyrighted information from information that's just proprietary, because there are a few different requirements for copyright information. Don't just mark a cover page, mark each item and each page if it's confidential, because sometimes cover pages get lost. On the other hand, please do not just mark everything you submit as confidential. Like I said, you do have to submit that information to the Attorney General. They will have to review each document. Then you're going to have to defend to the Attorney General why you marked the document as confidential. So it really takes up a lot more time, and the Attorney General doesn't appreciate that. Also be careful using email footers that mark every email as confidential. For instance, an email setting up a meeting or a call at noon, that's not confidential. And again, it just slows things down if there is a request for that information. Again, I would encourage you to coordinate with your legal counsel when you're marking your documents. We have had vendors who did not carefully take these steps to review and mark confidential information, and they were not happy later when those documents were released to the public. Also, keep organized and remember that these contracts last for years. So the team members that are handling marking documents right now might not be the team members that are talking with the Attorney General years down the road if a request is made. So try to keep organized and make sure what you're marking is confidential and that the process makes sense. This is your chance to get it right so that it's not a problem years down the road. And I will turn it back over to Colleen.
Thank you, Michelle. Next slide, Tracy. BIDSTAMP. So if you have never used BIDSTAMP before, it's important you pay attention, but there's also training available on the DIR website. Next slide. So anyone responding to this RFO must submit their response through the BIDSTAMP Vendor Information System, or the VIS portal. You have to request a login before you do that. If you already have a login and you have forgotten that, you can reach out to our IT department, and it's available on the website. There's a button that you can push that lets you ask a question or request a new vendor ID and password. But make sure that you have access to BIDSTAMP. Do that now. There's no reason for you to be waiting until the week before bids are due. Get that set up now. Make sure you get familiar with it. The link is available here. We will make sure that the link is available in the RFO. There's a section on this in the RFO, but I want to make sure that you are all paying attention when I say do not wait to the last minute to request an account. You will not be able to get everything loaded in time. Next slide. So if you have a disability and for some reason you cannot use the BIDSTAMP portal, please review section 3.1 of the solicitation and also reach out to me to let me know so that I can help you. We want to make sure that everybody has access and ability to respond, and I can work with you to get you what you need, but you need to reach out and let me know ASAP. Next. So when you go to the DIR website, you will be able to get to the BIDSTAMP information portal by selecting like login or my account at the top. And you'll be able to open a screen. And once you've opened the BIDSTAMP screen, you'll be able to see this button in the center here that says Open Solicitations. Once you've logged in, you've gotten what you need. Click on the Open Solicitations button to see all of the opportunities that DIR currently has active. Next slide. And you can see I have gone and done a recent screenshot. So this is what DIR currently has open. Right now we have Deliverables-Based Information Technology Services and the Microsoft Master Services RFOs 553 and 557. So you'll log on, you'll click on the RFO number, and if you're interested in BIDSTAMP, you'll click on the DIR CPO TMP 553. It's not a button, it's a hyperlink, but you'll click it there. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see your options for creating a new response. You should see the information about this RFO opportunity. You can see the number at the top, CPO TMP 553. You'll have buttons at the top that you can either respond to the solicitation, subscribe to the solicitation, or view solicitation documents if you've already loaded documents in there. You'll see information about the deadlines. So the question deadline, and I have disabled questions through BIDSTAMP. So the question deadline in the BIDSTAMP system shows that it has passed because I do not want questions coming in through BIDSTAMP. Those should be directed to me via email, but the date and time responses are due is 7/26/2021 at 2:00 p.m. So you can see that information And then you'll be able to see if you have any information that's in there. If you click the subscribe to solicitation, anytime I issue an addendum, I will click notify potential respondents. And the BIDSTAMP system will send you a system email notifying you that DIR has posted an addendum. I highly recommend you subscribe to this solicitation in BIDSTAMP as soon as possible so that you will get those notifications and you do not have to keep going to the ESPD daily to check to see if I have done anything to 553. Next slide. So respond to a solicitation or view response. It'll say respond to solicitation until you have added documents. And then it changes, that button changes to view response. You can click on that to be able to see what you have started working on. We talked about the subscribe to solicitations. It's super important. You can view the solicitation documents. That is the actual documents on the ESPD. It's hyperlinked, so it'll take you to there to pull anything down. And again, I have disabled that ask question in BIDSTAMP. You may still submit questions to me via email using the information in the RFO. Next slide. When you are responding to a solicitation, and this is again a screenshot because I pretended to be a vendor doing this, so make sure I could give you correct information. You will be able to either delete or submit, or at the bottom, you'll see RFO response documents new. Don't mess with the two top buttons until you are ready to do something final, which is either submit everything that you have uploaded or delete everything that you have uploaded and begin the process again. What you want to be doing is clicking on the new response document until you have loaded everything for that solicitation. Once you have done all of the required documents, you will submit by clicking the submit button at the top of the screen. It will submit to the system all of the documents that you had loaded. And you'll see that record list grow as you start loading new documents. If you hit delete, delete does not delete the last document you have uploaded. Delete deletes everything in there and cancels out the work that you have done. It will give you one opportunity. Are you really sure you want to delete this? And if you click through that too quickly and say, yes, we cannot help you. You have now deleted your response to the RFO. Do not use delete unless you absolutely, positively do not want to respond to this RFO. So I hope I have made that clear. If you have responded and you've responded correctly, you will get that system generated email and your delete button will change to a withdraw button. So that gives you, again, that opportunity to pull back your response if for some reason you decide that you no longer want to pursue this opportunity. Next slide. So here's the required files. These are the things I absolutely positively expect to see in that package. This is from RFO section 3.8.4. I'm not going to read them because I'm losing my voice and I'm losing participants because we have gone over time. So next slide. General information and response submittal. We talked about it a little bit. Next slide, Tracy. When you are submitting questions, make sure you reference the RFO page number or whatever the document title is, page number and section, so that we can easily find them for you. We are going to start answering questions soon. Anything that comes out of my mouth as a verbal answer is not official. Official answers will be posted to the ESPD in the form of an addendum. Make sure that you are checking the ESBD often for updates, or that you have subscribed to BIDSTAMP, this 553 opportunity, so that you can get those notifications when updates have been made. And questions, all questions regarding this RFO must be submitted in writing via email to me at this email address. And I have corresponded with maybe not 500 of you, but a lot of you already. So please continue following that format. Next slide. We talked about disqualification of offers. We are only emphasizing this because we do not want you to lose all the work. We want to partner with each and every one of you and give you that opportunity to do your very best job to become competitive. So make sure that you have signed your information form. Make sure that you complete your HSP and have taken Lynn and Teresa and the Hub office up on their offer to do that draft review so you do not get a disqualification. Make sure that you submit everything on or before the due date and time. Check your vendor performance system score. If you have less than a C, you may be a candidate for disqualification. So make sure you know what your score is before you invest a lot of time and effort into this. I guarantee if you have an F and it is well supported, you likely will not move forward in the process. If you have a corrective action plan through the comptroller because you have repeated negative vendor reports, we cannot contract with you by law. Make sure that you don't have any purchase orders that have been canceled in the last 12 months for non-performance. I cannot contract with you. And finally, we may disqualify you if you do not adhere to the single point of contact requirement in RFO section 3.1. So that is me. If you start asking other DIR employees and we are notified of that, we may disqualify you. That is a big deal. Delivery of offers. So when you're submitting your offers in, we require that you submit that through the BIDSTAMP BIS, unless you have made other arrangements in advance. And I am not talking about 5 minutes in advance of the due time. If there's some reason that you cannot get it to me via BIDSTAMP, you need to reach out and let me know as soon as you are aware of the issue or reason so that we can make those accommodations. Next slide. We've talked about this. You are able to talk to me about this RFO and the BIS. Contact me directly. If you have questions about the Hub subcontracting plan, you can contact Lynn Haughty at dir.hub@dir.texas.gov. And you can talk to her specifically about the Hub subcontracting plan. As she said, she will shut you down if you ask other questions related to the RFO. These are the only two people that you can talk to about this opportunity. If you are trying to talk to anyone else, stop. Go redirect yourself, catch yourself, because we will be made aware. Next slide. Show of hands. Do we want to take a 5-minute break or do we want to go straight into the question and answer? If you want a 5-minute break, raise your hand. All right, sorry y'all that want a 5-minute break. There's the vast majority do not. So we are going to go straight into the questions and answers. If you need a break, you are welcome to take a break because again, this is being recorded and will be posted on the ESBD, so you will not miss anything. All right, let's go. No, we don't need to go to the next slide. So I'm going to start with questions that I received prior to the question deadline for this pre-proposal conference. Because there are so many, I am only going to hit the frequently asked questions, the ones that I got multiples of. The first question is, The DIR DBITS customer list is not included with the solicitation package zip file. Can DIR please provide this? So DIR's answer is the DBITS customer attachment reference was included in error. We will not be providing that. We have removed that reference from the documents, and you will see that in a forthcoming addendum. If you want a list of current current DBITS customers, you can find that on the Open Data portal, which is available at https, that S is important, //data.texas.gov. You can also navigate to that through the DIR website by looking for open data. All right, next question. Given the consolidation of 9 categories to 4 and the large amount of services that now can be provided within a category, must vendors be able to provide all services listed within the category to be eligible, or is a subset okay? Unofficial answer, a subset is okay. We have talked about this already, but we will give you an official answer in writing. So you only need to provide me an example of one aspect of the technology category to meet the experience requirement. Next question. The instructions read as if the executive summary should be within the transmittal letter. I am trying to clarify if that is the case, or if the transmittal letter and executive summary are separate documents. For example, the executive summary as an attachment to the transmittal letter. So the answer is the transmittal letter and executive summary may be within the same document or may be submitted as 2 separate files. If you submit them as 2 files, clearly label the files so DIR may determine compliance with the response requirements. So you can see the naming convention that we have used. If you split it up, make sure one says exec summary and the other says trans letter, or whatever you want to clearly label for us what those are so that we can easily move through them. The next question, are 3 references total required for the response, or 3 references for each category to which we respond? And again, we've covered this pretty thoroughly, but I want to reiterate, BIR requests that respondents provide 3 references per technology category to which the respondent is responding. For example, if a respondent is seeking awards for all 4 technical categories, a total of 12 reference forms may be provided, 3 for each category. Now that might go down if you have 1 reference form that covers multiple categories. Next question. In previous DBITS RFOs, there was a portion of Exhibit B, respondent experience, titled Business Management Approach. Is that portion no longer required, or was it left out of the initial portion? The answer is the business management approach is not required for this RFO. We didn't ask for it. It has now sort of been incorporated into Exhibit C, customer contract monitoring and customer support plan. Next question. Can the government please confirm that all sectors refers to anything outside the remaining rows listed in Table 2 of Exhibit B, respondent experience? The answer is all sectors refers to the total number of years the respondent has been providing the required services to any of the 6 sectors listed below. This category is inclusive of the more specific sectors listed in Table 2. Next question. Would the state indicate if local governments, independent school districts, and institutes of higher education in Table 2 and 3 of Exhibit B, respondent experience, are specific to the state of Texas? Answer is local governments, independent school districts, and institutes of higher education are not specific to the state of Texas. We will take references from any state across the United States. Commonwealths are fine too. So for each of the market segments, you do not have to limit yourself to Texas-based experience only. Next question, can we use our own proposal template incorporating our own styles and branding to respond to Exhibit C? The answer is yes. Respondents may use their own proposal template when responding to Exhibit C. However, all questions and areas of Exhibit C will be scored. If you use your own template and you fail to cover all aspects as addressed in Exhibit C, your score may be negatively impacted. So if you want to use your template, we are okay with that. If we cannot find the information that we requested in Exhibit C and it is not easily identifiable, it may impact your score. So make sure you're very careful if you do go that route. Finally, we received a question, and I'm going to paraphrase it so I don't have to scroll through all of these pages. Can a prime vendor provide a subcontractor's experience to satisfy the technology categories? The answer to that is no. Experience provided must reflect the prime respondent's experience. As DIR cannot confirm nor control whether the subcontractor is proposed on any one customer opportunity. So we want to see the vendor who will be performing and responsible for the work having the experience that is provided. And that is it for my written questions. Mary, do you want to go and look at the questions that we received during this pre-bid?
Sure.
So I've got them up here if you want me just to go through them.
Yeah.
The first question that we received, we talked about references, we've answered that. Next question, does the contract include instructor-led training? The unofficial answer, until it's in the form of an addendum on ESPD, is yes, it may, if it is billed as a deliverables-based IT service and falls into one of the technology categories. For the respondent information form, it is my understanding that we don't need to have a CMBL, so we put NA on the question number 2, CPA respondent ID number. I am going to defer that simply because I want to make sure I give you the correct answer. But generally the CMBL and the respondent ID number are two very different things, generally. So I will give you an official answer. Next question, how many applications are PEGA BPM? The answer to that is we don't track that. It depends on the customer usage, and DIR does not necessarily track the customer usage. Next question, is it okay if we both propose and sub as a hub vendor? Also, how do we let other participants know we are available to sub to them? This is a great question. We will be publishing the attendee list. And I believe one of the questions that you filled out when registering for this webinar was whether or not you are a prime or a sub or both. Vendors who are interested in finding a subcontractor may read that list and determine that they want to reach out to you, or you may read the list that's published and reach out to any of the primes that are listed. That information will be provided in the form of an addenda. It is up to you all, however, to make those teaming arrangements. DIR is not and will not insert themselves in the middle of arrangements that are made. Page 18, section 3.8.3.3, paragraph B, references Exhibit 3, respondent release of liability. We assume this was intended to be Exhibit E, correct? Yes, that is correct, and we will be providing an update on that with the next addendum that gets published. Is being a Texas hub required, or is another state or federal hub certification acceptable? I'm going to let Lynn answer that question.
Okay, we only recognize the state of Texas hub certification. And so we have the state of Texas hub goals that are associated with our procurement. And there was another question a little further down about, is a certain percentage of this project going to small businesses? Is it a set aside? We do not have a set aside. This is a good faith effort. So there's not a certain percentage that must go to hub certified vendors or small businesses. But if you're going to propose any hub certified vendors, that is the state of Texas hub certification, not the federal hub zone certification.
Thank you, Lynn. For each category, do we need to satisfy all the services in one category, such as category 2, or can we just do database management? And we've covered this, but I will reiterate, you can just cover a subsection of the overall category. How does DBITS affect tax policy in Texas if that service deliverable includes software or hardware? It doesn't include software or hardware. That is considered out of scope for DBITS. It is all about services with DBITS. Is this a new contract to the DIR or a replacement for another set of services? If a replacement, is there a list of incumbents? The DIR currently has contracts for deliverables-based IT services. So there's a lengthy list of 70 active vendors who currently perform these services. You can access that list by going to the DIR website, searching on the term DBITS, clicking on all contracts and services so that you can only see the contracts. And then there should be a Excel file that you can download that includes all of the DBITS vendors. Next question, are the 4 categories meant to be strictly or loosely defined? For instance, would security assessments, SOC 2, qualify under IT assessments? It is meant to be loosely defined. This is a contract vehicle for deliverables-based IT services. So if SOC 2 of security assessments is an deliverable-based IT service, and you can explain to us the deliverables and how that would work, it could qualify. In the RFO, it listed attachment 5, DIR customer list, but didn't show this on the presentation. We covered this just now. This attachment actually doesn't exist. You need to pull it off of the DIR open data portal. I find the conflating of solutions and products terminology to be confusing in this context. Consulting services are pretty much intended to solve problems and thereby deliver solutions. Those solutions may be a strategic plan, or they may be a custom application that automates a business process. What do you mean by solution that you are excluding from DBITS? This is a great question. So when I said solution earlier, it meant a solution where the vendor brought in a software or hardware piece in addition to the services that they are provided. The sale of software and hardware, whether that software be commercially available or a custom design that was built for another customer that is now for sale on the market somewhere, those are excluded. You may not bring those in. You can provide the management of the services. You can provide work with the customer on a deliverables basis. You can build them up a new application from scratch. You cannot sell separately a custom designed application outside of that contract with the customer, something you built for the customer, and include that as a line item necessarily. So Mary Vickery, who is our DBITS guru, will be reviewing the customer statements of work to make sure that those things aren't going on. And if you have a question after you have received a contract award about what you are wanting to propose to a customer, you can reach out to Mary and she will tell you yay or nay. Hope that answered that question. Can we include past performance references from our subcontractor teammates? I've answered this, but I will answer it again and say no. I want references and experience from the prime vendor or group that is responding. DIR needs assurances that the contract that it is awarding can be serviced by the entity that is submitting the bid. So subcontractors can change and do change very often with these contracts. So your subcontractor experience may not actually be something that you ever bring to bear in that contract award. We need to assure that the experience that we are evaluating is the experience our customers can expect. Same question. Can the same example be used in different categories? If the different categories have aspects of both, yes, but just make sure it's very clear. Do you require a blue ink wet signature? No, we are receiving electronic responses. We do not need it to be a printout that you sign and then scan and turn into a PDF. You can do electronic signatures. When do you anticipate getting answers back to us for our questions? Right now, plus the formal addendum will be published hopefully this week. Probably not today, given that it is already 4 o'clock, but we will get those out to you as soon as possible. Will agencies send out RFOs to all vendors on the awarded list under a specific category or just a subset of vendors under each category? I highly encourage you to educate yourself on the threshold requirements for use of the DIR cooperative contracts. State agency customers are not required to submit RFO or opportunities to all vendors in a category. If the thresholds as they stand, and they can change with each legislative session, require customers to compete anything over $50,000 to 3 or more vendors, and anything over $1 million to 6 or more vendors. So if there were 70 vendors in a particular category, a customer is not obligated, regardless of the dollar value, to send it to all 70 vendors. They only have to send it per law to up to 6 vendors. We encourage and we do provide training to our customers that they seek as much competition as possible, but they are not required. Non-state agency customers have their own internal policies, and they may or may not follow those same threshold guidelines. Could someone submit as a prime and be used as a sub on another submittal? Yes, they may. Would you please talk about the D&B report and how you evaluate that as pass-fail for these responses? So DIR looks at the D&B report to determine the risk of a financial insolvency. So if you would request your Dun & Bradstreet report from D&B, you will see what your score is. Generally, if your score is below a 9, DIR considers you to be safe enough to contract with. If your score is a 9 or higher, generally that could be grounds for a failure. Will we be required to include 3 attachment E for each reference. Yes, you will need to include a release of liability for each reference that you think is going to come back to DIR, just so that we can reach out to them if there's any problems. You are absolutely required to include attachment E, release of liability, if you have canceled contracts. You must disclose the canceled contracts to us, and we must be able to reach out to those canceled contract references to determine the nature of the cancellation. Oops, there was one that just went away. Can the documents be submitted individually, or do they need to be submitted all at once? I prefer that you submit them individually. If it is easier for you to put them all together, you may do so. But my preference and what will make it easier on me and the evaluators is if you submit those individually. Just to clarify, DBITS contract award is October for 2 years. Then we go out and contract with an agency, which can only go as long as the DBITS contract. So something less than 2 years plus option years. Yes, but you also need to read the survival clause in the standard terms and conditions document, which is attachment 2. So that survival clause allows customer POs to live beyond the life of the DIR contract for a period of up to 3 years. To confirm, the release forms are sent with our proposal to DIR, not to the customer who is giving the reference to send those releases to DIR. To send those releases to DIR when they send the reference directly to you. So yes, send the release of liability forms to me. If you have a reference who is potentially reluctant to provide you with a reference, you can also send them a copy of the form. I need to have them for my records. You are welcome to share those releases with your customers. Are valid electronic signatures acceptable? Yes, they absolutely are. We are a hub company with the state of Texas experience. How do we get a list of potential crimes? You will check the addendum that I post with this materials, and you will look at the attendee list to this webinar and see who has indicated that they intend to pursue this as a crime. Will commercial or private agency experience and references be accepted in addition to government and given even weight? Yes, your experience providing services within the scope of this RFO will be considered. I apologize if already shared, but what is the page limitation on Exhibit B, and are there limits on any others? So every document that has a page limit will have it within that document. There is not necessarily a page limit to Exhibit B, but there are tables that you need to fill out. So watch for an updated answer to that, because I will go and validate that for you in the written response. We've talked about that. 3 references per category. We've talked about that. We've talked about that. Can references be entities or individuals that are not directly involved with the state of Texas? References can be entities that are not directly involved with the state of Texas. It is very difficult for evaluators to gauge if it is an individual who does not have a company, how pertinent that reference is to the service at hand. So I prefer references, and I encourage you to seek references from businesses or state agencies or any other type of entity that is a professional type organization, and do not provide personal references from individual people who have known you since you were 5 years old. Is there a difference between creating an account on the DIR website versus creating an account on ESBD? Yes, you don't need an account to use the ESBD. The ESBD is a search engine for opportunities. You should be able to easily go in and search without an account. The account on the DIR website allows you to access the BIDSTAMP BIS in order to submit your response. Oh, Tracy, you're moving stuff around and now I've lost my place. We've answered, is there 3 references per category? We've answered, are subcontractor references accepted? Can we use the references if we have provided? Can we use the references if we have provided services as a teaming partner to the client? Yes, if you provided services either as a prime or a subcontractor or a teaming partner to the client, you can use that client as your reference. If you are a prime contractor responding to DBITS. Primes, however, cannot use subcontractor experience. Okay. Are subcontractor references accepted? No, they are not.
There was a question, is there a percentage of contracts that will be awarded to small businesses, approximate or mandated?
No. There is no small business set aside. Did I get that right, Lynn?
That is correct.
Okay. Are the references confidential? If they are marked as such, they would be considered confidential. If they are not marked as such, they are subject to open records requests. Where or how do we indicate the technology category the reference applies to? On the reference form in the project description. So that is that last field at the top of the form before the questions start. That is where I would note the technology category that you believe the references will be speaking to. Regarding the references being within the last 5 years, should we assume if the work was completed in the last 5 years, even if it began earlier, that is acceptable? Yes, as long as the reference speaks to the work that was performed and the work was performed in a time period that falls within the past 5 years. Can you use the same reference for different technology categories, provided that the work performed is applicable to the categories? Yes, yes, you can. Can references come from a prime contractor? If the prime contractor is to the entity that you delivered the work to and they are a viable entity, can speak to the quality of the work? Yes, because you're basically getting a reference from a business, just like they are any business, and there is no guarantee that that prime is a bidder on this RFO. Where shall we mention if we are using the same reference for multiple categories? On the top of the reference form in the project description, that's that last field before the questions start, where you're describing the work that was performed, you would mention all categories to which that reference is speaking. What is your scoring methodology for references? We are not scoring the references per se. We are considering them in light of the experience and projects that were described on Exhibit B. Will a public sector reference hold more weight than a private sector reference? No, there is no weight on the form, field, or entity that the reference. We are checking to validate that the project experience that you have described in your Form B, Exhibit B, matches your reference form so that we can say, yes, they said they did this, and here's a reference that shows that they did this. If I currently have a DIR approved hub plan, can I copy it into the form for this solicitation and submit with signature?
No. And I say this because I don't know what method you have completed. So if you need to do your good faith effort and reach out to 3 hubs or 2 minority trade organizations, you still need to do so. So don't take that for granted. You may have hubs on your current hub form that may have lost their hub certification. So you need to verify that the vendors you're providing that you state are hub certified are actually currently hub certified. So you need to go through that process and ensure all of the information you're providing is accurate and current.
If we were the subcontractor on a project done for Texas Education Department, then would we use TEA as our reference or the prime contractor? Up to you. Who do you think will give you the reference to speak to the work and quality of work that you provided? Do we have to be an office in Texas to be considered an award as a prime contractor on DBITS? We will have a hub subcontracting plan. We are US headquartered. You do not have to have an office in Texas. You do have to be eligible to conduct business in Texas. Does completing hub subcontracting form mean committing to 26% goal or selecting one of the 4 options? And will this be scored?
There are not 4 options. And you will determine how you can best fulfill this contract, depending on how you choose to do that, whether it's subcontracting or not. And then if you are subcontracting, meeting the hub goal or not, you will complete the appropriate good faith effort method. And if you have questions, you will email dir.hub@dir.texas.gov to ask for assistance.
What if your company is new to the Texas market and does not have references in Texas, but rather from other states in which we do business? Do we lose points? You do not lose points. Other state references are allowable. Where should respondents document the category or multiple categories for a reference on the reference form? I bet you all know the answer to this one now. It is the last field on the reference form, right before you start the questions for the reference to fill out, title, project description. Are recent references required, e.g. within the last 3 or 5 years? Yes, within the last 5 years. Exhibit D looks to be the reference form. I am not seeing the hub form. Can you please point us to this form? Thank you. I will check, but there is a form. I think it is not exhibit, but attachment 3. Or? Yes, I will give you a written answer for it. But that form that was provided is only an example. It is not the form that you will fill out. You need to pull down the most current hub subcontracting form from the comptroller.
It's attachment 3.
Attachment 3, thank you. Can we change hub subcontractor after contract is awarded?
Yes, but let me warn you, should you propose and state you're going to be subcontracting and meeting the hub goal, and then after contract award state you will be self-performing or that you will not be meeting the hub goal, we will have to have a meeting to discuss. Please don't, switch and bait and switch us and say you're going to promise to use hub subcontractors and then not utilize them. Do not waste anyone's time. It doesn't buy you any extra points. You don't get any gold stickers or gold stars. It's a pass-fail item. If you complete the form correctly, you pass. If you don't, you fail.
And should they determine additional partnerships?
Yes. But after you are awarded a contract, should you need to onboard new subcontractors because you've got a lot of work going on, you absolutely can modify that plan at any time.
The work must be, the hub subcontracting plan, that if it's to be revised, must be approved by DIR prior to that subcontractor performing any work.
Absolutely. If you engage with in any work with any subcontractors that were not authorized or approved on the current HSP with DIR, those customers are not required to pay you.
Thank you. If our organization is a certified Texas hub, How might that change how we fill out the form?
It might not change at all. Again, depend whether you're a hub or non-hub, you get to determine how you can best fulfill the contract. And then you will fill out the appropriate method, whether you're going to be self-performing, whether you're going to be subcontracting and meeting the hub goal, in which you would complete method A, or subcontracting and not meeting the hub goal, in which you would complete method B.
Okay. Did that one. What preference is given to a vendor who states they will be using hubs versus those that are proposing to perform the work without hub subs?
You don't get any preferences. You don't get any scores. This is a pass-fail item.
If we plan on being a subcontractor, do we have to fill out an HSP for subcontracting out work? Because we won't be subcontracting out work.
If you plan on being a subcontractor, that means you're going to be included on a prime respondent's hub subcontracting plan. So you're not going to respond to this RFO if you're intending on being someone else's subcontractor. So they would include you on their HSP.
If a reference has moved to a new role department or organization, do they need to reference both their role at the time of service as well as the current role in their response to tie or match to Exhibit E? I am really glad somebody asked this question. I would prefer you get the reference from the agency or entity, not from the person that you worked most closely with. So if you worked with Tim and Tim left Acme to go and work for Warner Brothers, you need the reference from Acme. That is where you performed the work. Do not let your reference name dictate who talks to the work that you perform. So ask for Tim's replacement at Acme, contact somebody else at Acme that you know, but really the reference should come from the entity that received the work product that you provided. Next question, do we submit one BADSTAMP per category we are applying for? I will contact my agency accessibility coordinator and give you a written answer to that one. How many points in scoring are available for our BADSTAMP and PDAA response? No points, 0 points, because 80 plus 20 adds up to 100, so there's no points left. This is a pass-fail requirement. If you do not fill these out, you will not get a contract. Does a vendor who has won a contract in the past and has history delivering projects have a marked advantage over first-time vendors? Is past performance heavily factored in competition? So review the RFO and the weighted evaluation criteria and Exhibit B, and you will see the information that we are scoring. It's not necessarily that a first-time vendor has less chance to get a contract award, but we do look at past performance and references, and that is 80% of your overall score. Y'all, my boss just walked in and he's making me nervous now. If we as a vendor are not a hub, but we employ minorities and women that will be working on the awarded contracts, does that self-fulfill? If not, are we required to subcontract with a DIR hub in order to be considered for award? Or will not having a hub subcontractor cause our points to be so diminished that we are unlikely to receive an award?
So you don't get awarded any points on your hub subcontracting plan. It's a pass-fail item. And we don't look at the number of employees that you have. You're thinking of hub zone when you consider that. So again, you as a respondent get to determine how you can best fulfill this contract. And then you will complete the appropriate method the Hub good faith effort method, depending on how you choose to respond to this RFO. You're going to either self-perform, you're going to meet that Hub goal, or you're going to not meet that Hub goal in subcontracting.
Do we need to be registered business with the Texas Secretary of State in order to be awarded contract? You need to be registered before I can give you a contract. You do not need to be registered to respond to this. You are eligible for an award if during the negotiation process, when I send you that intent to negotiate and ask for your information, you are not registered yet, and you do not get registered by the time I cut off the window for awards, you will not get an award. It just has to be completed prior to receipt of a signed contract. Can we respond to this RFO with another partner? Yes, yes, you can. Are subcontractor references accepted? No, no, they are not.
Can we go back to that another partner and say that we're going to award to a single entity?
So can you partner with?
So can you partner with and respond? But we will, I get it. That took me a second to get there. So if you respond with another vendor as a partnership, we will award to the partnership of Teresa and Lynn, Hub Gods, that's who would get the award. So Teresa wouldn't get the award, or Lynn wouldn't get the award. The entity created in that partnership would get the award. Can you please confirm there is no pricing requested from respondents for this RFO? All SOW-based pricing upon award on a per project basis. Yes, you are correct. No pricing is required at this point. You will price as individual customers submit their projects to you. Can Prime also work as other companies' sub? Yes, you can, as long as you work it out with that other company. What is the CPA respondent ID number? Is this our federal tax ID number? Very close to. Texas adds another digit to it typically, either a 1 or a 3.
A 1 in the front and then a 3-digit number at the end.
There you go. It's a 1, the number 1 at the front of your federal tax ID, and then a 3-digit identifier. So if you have a federal tax ID number, you're most of the way there. You just need to register with the Secretary of State. CPA will issue you numbers. You'll get what you need. Can the executive summary include images or graphs, or may it only include text? It is your executive summary. So do what you need to with it, but be aware that you have a page limit on the executive summary. And executive summary means a high-level description of the work that I would see when I read the rest of your proposal or your response. So use that executive summary to tell me the story of your company and what I will see when I read your papers. So if you use up all of your pages with pictures, that's not going to be extremely helpful for the evaluators. Is there any advantage of being classified as a small business but not a hub? No, there is not. Are there any page limitations to Exhibit C? If there are limitations, it will be addressed within the document. And I will give you a formal written answer once I have reviewed that. I don't remember putting that, but I may have. I've slept since I published the RFO. Is BIDSTAMP the same thing as DIR? When going to the link to BIDSTAMP, it then directs me to DIR. BIDSTAMP is a tool utilized by DIR. So they are not the same thing. DIR is the agency. BIDSTAMP BIS is the name of the application. But you will need to register from the DIR website in order to use the BIDSTAMP portal. is there a cap on spend for DBITS contracts? So this is the threshold thing again. So DIR can award contracts that are $0. Agencies will then use those contracts for their own purposes. When an agency submits a statement of work to vendors on DBITS, the current, as of right this second, threshold is up to $5 million for the initial term. However, legislation was just passed at the state capitol and it goes into effect September 1. That allows agencies to use their discretion past $5 million and up to a $10 million award. So starting September 1, the DBITS threshold could be up to $10 million. Currently, the rule that DIR uses in our Texas Administrative Code rules for thresholds defines that initial contract value to be the initial term only. So if it was a 1-year initial term with 5 one-year renewals, those renewal options would not count towards the total contract value. That might also change. So I am answering you based on point in time. I will put this in writing. It's a little more complicated, but generally, state agencies can use us up to $10 million for each term of the contract, whatever their terms may be. So if they just awarded you a contract for the 4 years of this contract that DIR awards, and each of those years was $10 million, it could be a $40 million spend. They do not have to. They are only obligated to use these contracts up to $5 million starting September 1. Can we cite federal experience either in the Exhibit B narrative or in our references? Yes, yes, you can. How many new vendors that you plan to have for each category? In other words, do you have a goal of the total number of vendors that DIR would like to have for each category? No, I do not have a goal. I want more than 6. That is the only goal I have. That way, state agencies will have the opportunity to do a thorough competition when they are trying to find vendors. Will DIR accept federal contract references? Yes, we still will. And if so, how should we document these in the tables on Exhibit B? You can add a row to Exhibit B if you need to and you want to say federal, or you could call them government. It is really up to you how you want to call that to our attention. Can we attach additional documentation than what is listed on the RFO exhibits, transmittal letter, and addenda? Sure, you can, but I will not score it. You are welcome to send us whatever information you want. I will only score the materials that I outlined for you in the weighted evaluation criteria. Are financial disclosure required? No, we check using the Dun and Bradstreet number. We look at the SER score specifically. So you can check your own SER score by contacting Dun and Bradstreet. I believe it's like a $35, $36 charge. If you want to do that to see what your score is. It is similar to your personal credit score. So I recommend that you determine what your company's financial health is, knowing that DIR will likely not award a contract to you if you have a 9 on your SER score with Dun and Bradstreet. Would the evaluation be done for each individual contract offering? If a vendor submits the response for all of the 4 offerings and couldn't make a cutoff in one of the offerings, would the vendor still be considered for the remaining 3? Yes, this is a great question, and I'm surprised it took us so long to get to it. You will be scored per technology category. and you will be awarded the technology categories that you fall in the competitive range for. So if you respond to 4, but you are only in the competitive range for 3 of the 4, you will still receive 3 contract awards, and you will not be given the 4th category. You will still only receive a single contract, but your contract will detail the technology categories that are pertinent to you. As in the total amount of spend that would go through BIDSTAMP, not a cap on an individual SOW. Refer to RFO section 1.4.5 for the total spend per category for DBITS. And in that table, there's an actual summation of the spend for all categories. So you can look at it there. You can also use the Texas Open Data Portal to query that. But off the top of my head, I don't know what the spend is.
But we don't have a cap as far as how much each contract can be awarded. Total. So if
You won't max out.
you won't.
You just mentioned that we can use references from any state. Can we also use references from other industries? Yes, you can. You've listed for instance, utilities, telecom, finance, healthcare. Yes, the references just need to speak to your ability to provide the services in that technology category. Is a reference acceptable if the reference has changed companies from an original client for whom the services were provided? We just talked about that. Yes, but it is better if you go to the entity that received the services and not an individual who you may have worked with. We are not interested in what your friend at the agency thinks about you. We are interested in what the agency overall thinks about your company's performance. If we are utilizing any partner for any of the category, can we use their references? If you are a partnership, so Lynn and Teresa Corps has bid on this. Those references can be from either Lynn or Teresa because the award will be to the entity that they formed, that collaboration. If you are a prime and you have partnered, and you can't see my air quotes, with someone who is not going to be on the name of that award, then no, you can only use the references for the entity that is receiving the award, should they be successful. What is the file size limit for documents uploaded to BIDSTAMP? I know there is one. It should be listed on the BIDSTAMP. It is super, super high. And I will tell you, with the page limit requirements, I doubt any of you are going to hit that limit, but I will research this and give you the formal written answer. All right. If I did this right, I think I have answered all of the questions. So Tracy, if you want to go to the next slide, if you're still there. Oh, wait, before I go further, I just pulled the DMB credit report and it cost around $140. So it will cost you around $140 if you need to pull your DMB credit report. It is still a good thing to know, particularly with DIR and cooperative contracts, but with any other state agency, we are required to assess the risk and make sure that we are not awarding to vendors who potentially could be going out of business. So here's some final reminders. What you heard today is unofficial. It is not official until we put it in writing and post it on the ESPD. Any changes or additional information regarding the RFO will also show up on the ESPD. The link is here in the slides. It is available on the DIR website on the current contracting initiatives page. And if you register for BIDSTAMP, you can also subscribe to this. And all of the documents are available by clicking the View RFO Documents link. I am reminding you, it is your responsibility to keep up with these documents. There are a lot of you and there's only one of me, so I am going to be posting and pushing out information, but I will not be calling you individually or holding hands. We've got a lot of work to get done together. Next slide. Schedule of events. We saw this earlier. We're looking at it now. We are finishing the pre-proposal conference. Your next deadline that you need to worry about is July 16th. Do not wait until July 16th and hold all of your burning questions close to your chest. Submit them as you have them, and I will answer them as I get them. And that way we will get much better responses together. Your deadline for the responses is July 26th. I am not contemplating an extension at this point in time. If it turns out that I have messed up in communicating in some way, shape, or form, and it looks like you guys are struggling with some of the requirements, at that point, I will make a determination. But currently, I think this was a fairly clean posting, and it was a very clear period on this webinar here. So I think we're okay, and we will hit the July 26th date. And then you can see contract awards should be starting in September to October. That means that you don't need to contact me prior to September because I won't have an update for you. If it looks like we are running behind, I will post an addendum to the closed RFO, maybe using the pre-solicitation posting, and push that out to you all so that you can see that. And I will definitely update the current contracting initiatives page to let you know that we have pushed the schedule out because of the number of you that wanted to be partners with me, because I'm an awesome person and you guys are providing great services. But the more emails I get, the more I have to slow down to respond to them. So make sure when you are sending me questions, you are asking questions pertinent to you or your response and not general queries about where are you in the process, because I will stop what I am doing to answer your question. And you are holding up awards, not only for yourself, but for others who are waiting for the award. Next slide. Again, you contact me. I'm the only person that you can contact unless you have hub questions. And then you can contact dir.hub@dir.texas.gov. Next one. Thank you. We made it to the end. Thank you all. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. Look for an ESPD posting this week. I appreciate you guys.